Voting is underway on the final day of Egypt's Senate elections. At least 22 die in 24 hours at Gaza's Nasser medical complex amid ongoing bombardment. And UN experts warn Gaza Humanitarian Foundation violates law by mixing aid with military aims. You're watching Q News at 8 with me, Hani Saif, and in the news today, voting has commenced on the final and second day of Egypt's Senate elections, marking the conclusion of the electoral process. Citizens are participating nationwide to select their representatives for the upper chamber, with polling stations witnessing a notable turnout as the process draws to a close. The second and final day of Egypt's Senate elections has commenced amid heavy security. Voting is held across 8,825 polling stations nationwide to facilitate citizens' participation. The elections aim to select 200 of the 300 Senate members, with the president appointing the remaining 100. The country is divided into 27 single-member districts and 4 list-based districts. Total of 424 candidates, including 183 independents and 241 party representatives, compete. Extensive measures ensure voters can easily locate their polling stations and cast ballots smoothly, reflecting Egypt's commitment to a transparent and accessible electoral process. A noticeable surge of young voters flocked to polling stations on the second day of Egypt's 2025 Senate elections, held from August 4th and 5th from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Young voters arrived early, demonstrating their awareness and eagerness to shape the country's future. Polling stations were well organized with full cooperation from judges and supervisors. Voters adhered strictly to procedures, ensuring a smooth and orderly election process. Women took center stage at polling stations, showing strong and positive participation in the second day of Egypt's 2025 Senate elections. Voters turned out in large numbers, supported by smooth security and organizational measures, ensuring a seamless electoral process. Participants emphasized their commitment to this key constitutional event and their support for Egypt's political leadership. Polling sites were prepared to provide a comfortable environment, including dedicated waiting areas for seniors and people with disabilities to facilitate their voting experience. The National Elections Authority has confirmed ongoing measures to facilitate voting for seniors and people with special needs during Egypt's Senate elections. These include locating polling stations on ground floors for easier access, providing wheelchairs, clear signage on voting procedures, and shaded waiting areas. Ahmed Bidderi, the executive director of the authority, said 125 polling stations have been specifically arranged on ground floors, equipped with ballots for visually impaired voters. A newly introduced sign language on ballots allows hearing impaired voters to cast their votes independently. Election officials are also instructed to assist voters upon request while ensuring the secrecy of the ballot. For more analysis, we now move to Hela Al-Hamalawi in our newsroom. Hela.
Thank you so much, Hani. And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the member of the Nazaha or Integrity Coalition, Mrs. Julia Costa. Welcome to Q News. Mrs. Julia, how has the Nazaha or Integrity Coalition monitored the overall transparency and fairness of the second day of Egypt's Senate elections?
Hello, thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So, Nazaha Coalition is a coalition of 3 international organizations expert in observing the elections in one national organization. And we are composed by 30 international observers from 14 different nationalities from all over the world. And we have a long form where we use to fill in every subcommittee that we go. And in this form, we analyze all the key aspects, follow national and international standards, and then we submit this form just after leaving the subcommittee, and the research group get all the information on lifetime, and then they collect and produce all the data necessary that we're gonna release later in a full report.
Mm-hmm. So what specific challenges did the coalition observe in ensuring electoral integrity across the 8,825 polling stations?
So to give the current results, we're gonna release this report in a press conference. So far, some of the key things that we saw was assistance to elderly and also people with disabilities. I have seen wheelchair in the voting places. Also, I have seen signs in Arabic language and also sign language. So far, the place that I have been, I saw they provide the assistance to make everybody included in the democratic party that we're having now with the Senate elections.
Mm-hmm. So in your assessment, how well did the election authorities accommodate the vulnerable groups such as seniors, people with special needs?
So as I said, I have seen they are very welcoming, providing the support. Besides of the signs in Arabic, sign language, the wheelchairs, I also saw some centers with medical assistant, so people can have medical assistance while they go for voting.
So what role did the coalition play in overseeing the participation of young voters and women during the elections? Did you notice more turnover by young people and women?
Yes, women, for me, it's something that it's very interesting because I saw a lot of women in this election, in the previous ones that I participate. So for me, it's very important to see women participation, also youth participation, and that's something that I have witnessed now in the Senate elections.
Mm-hmm. What caught your attention the most, Mrs. Julia, as you were observing the electoral process?
I would say that's how people are very welcoming and also very intent to participate. So outside you see people singing, have music, so make the process very welcome, and people are really willing to go there and participate and voting. So for me, it's very interesting to see this, how people are like happy and celebrating like the possibility to vote and to participate in the democratic.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was Mrs. Julia Costa joining us from Cairo, and she is the member of the Nazaha or Integrity Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. Now we go back again to Hani Saif in our studio to resume the bulletin. To you, Hani.
Thank you, Hela. Ladies and gentlemen, we head on to the latest developments in Gaza. At least 22 people died within 24 hours at the Nasser medical complex in Qnews, southern Gaza, as intense bombardment and mass displacement continue to overwhelm the health sector. Hospital officials reported treating 197 injured patients, while 587 passed through the emergency room and 632 underwent rapid triage. The pediatric emergency unit saw 512 children, and an overflow tent handled another 195 cases. Medical teams are operating under extreme pressure, facing severe shortages in medical supplies, overcrowded facilities and limited access to specialized care. Gaza's Ministry of Health reported 8 new deaths from famine and malnutrition in the past 24 hours, including 1 child. Since the start of Israel's war, 188 people have died from starvation in Gaza, with 94 of the victims being children. The Palestine Red Crescent Society has reported that volunteer Abdelmajid Adnan Salame was fatally shot by Israeli forces while searching for food near Rafah amid severe hunger in Gaza. Salame, 28 years old, had spent 7 years assisting the PRCS ambulance teams, risking his life to rescue the wounded since the war began. The PRCS condemned the killing and stressed that its team face extreme hunger but continue their critical work. The organization called for all border crossings to open immediately, stressing that unrestricted aid flow is a matter of life and death. The UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, has reported that an average of 28 Palestinian children are being killed daily in Gaza as a result of ongoing Israeli bombardment and severe restrictions on humanitarian aid. The agency described the causes of death as including airstrikes, malnutrition, and the collapse of vital services. It stressed that the number of children dying each day is comparable to the size of a typical classroom. UNICEF reiterated the urgent need to provide Gaza's children with food, clean water, medicine and protection, stating that, above all, a ceasefire is critically needed. The UN has warned that hundreds of aid trucks will be needed daily in Gaza for months or even years to meet massive humanitarian needs amid ongoing shortages. Jens Larke, OCHA spokesperson, emphasized the vast gap between the small aid delivered so far and the severe crisis, with people dying daily. Despite recent pauses allowing some aid trucks and airdrops, much of the aid is lost to looting and violence before reaching distribution centers. UNICEF highlights the devastating impact on children, with 1 child killed every hour since the conflict began.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and more hundreds of trucks.
UN experts have raised serious concerns over the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, warning it violates international law by mixing humanitarian relief with covert military agendas. They accuse Israel of failing to its legal duties as an occupying power, with nearly 1,400 people killed and thousands injured at aid distribution sites run by the group. Experts called for strict international oversight, condemning what they described as a dangerous normalization of impunity amid ongoing war crimes allegations. More than 1,000 scientists have signed a petition calling on CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, to take a stand over Israel's war on Gaza, citing its foundational principle of avoiding military-related work. The petition highlights concerns that the war not only undermines human dignity and takes a heavy toll on civilian lives, but also threatens peaceful scientific collaboration between Israeli, Palestinian, and international researchers. The scientists emphasize the importance of international cooperation in science, warning that the ongoing conflict jeopardizes shared values and the integrity of global scientific partnerships. Jan Egeland, Secretary-General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, has strongly criticized Israel's actions in Gaza, saying international law is being violated on a daily basis. Egeland called for an immediate ceasefire and unrestricted humanitarian access, stressing that only opening land crossings for large-scale aid can prevent famine. He also warned that Israeli control over aid access must end and said Norwegian investments linked to companies contributing to these violations should be withdrawn. Egeland further accused extremists in the Israeli government of working with settler groups aiming to seize Palestinian land. The Danish Refugee Council has reported that 70% of Palestinians in Gaza suffer from extreme weakness due to starvation, making it difficult to travel on foot to aid distribution points. A recent survey found limited access to clean water and hot meals, with many receiving little to no aid. Witnesses described violent attacks targeting civilians trying to reach help, calling the assistance blood aid due to the dangers involved. According to the government media office in Gaza, only 769 aid trucks entered Gaza between July 27th and August 4th, averaging just 85 trucks per day. This is far below the 500 to 600 daily trucks the UN Relief and Works Agency says are needed to meet basic humanitarian needs. Despite Israel's announcement to ease restrictions on aid deliveries starting July 27th, the flow remains insufficient to prevent worsening hunger and the collapse of the healthcare system. The lowest daily figure was recorded on August 2nd, with just 36 trucks entering the strip. Senior Hamas official Izzat al-Rishiqa has endorsed the Freedom to Report initiative launched by over 200 journalists worldwide, demanding immediate and uncensored access for foreign media to Gaza. The campaign highlights an information blackout imposed by Israel, accusing it of restricting press freedom to control the narrative. Al-Rishiqa condemned Israel's ban on foreign journalists as a tactic to hide its military actions. Since the conflict began, more than 200 media workers have been killed in Gaza. Israeli opposition leader Benny Gantz has condemned government ministers for their harsh attacks on Army Chief Eyal Zamir, who reportedly opposes Prime Minister Netanyahu's push for a full military occupation of Gaza. Gantz stressed that while the military is subordinate to political leadership, Zamir is not merely a puppet, and urged officials to address political issues rather than blame the military. The comments come ahead of a war cabinet meeting where Zamir is expected to present military options. Meanwhile, far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir insisted the army chief must follow political orders regardless of personal views. Two German Air Force planes have parachuted 44 pallets of aid into Gaza, delivering almost 75 tons of supplies since last Friday. Each aircraft dropped about 11 tons per flight. Pilots expressed relief, noting their efforts bring critical aid amid a near-total Israeli blockade. Despite limited humanitarian pauses and airdrops, aid deliveries remain insufficient to meet Gaza's urgent needs, with supplies often delayed or intercepted before reaching those in need. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong has warned that the ongoing conflict in Gaza poses a risk that there will be no Palestine left to recognize. Wong said that recognizing Palestinian statehood is a matter of when, not if, but did not specify a timeline. She acknowledged widespread public concern following recent protests in Sydney over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. When asked about possible sanctions on Israel, Wong said Australia prefers not to pre-announce such measures, but confirmed existing sanctions on two far-right Israeli ministers and extremist settlers.
To put our view very clearly at the most senior levels of the government, but of course that's not all we must do.
France has condemned Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's recent visit to Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, calling it a violation of the site's historical status quo. The French Foreign Ministry spokesperson warned that such actions undermine international efforts for a two-state solution and stressed the need to preserve the mosque's status, highlighting Jordan's key role in maintaining peace. Israeli occupation forces targeted Palestinian infrastructure east of Tubas in the northern Jordan Valley, demolishing a 1,000 cubic meter water tank and an 800-meter water pipeline. Troops also stormed Khirbet Yarza village, confiscating a residential tent and a power generator serving the local village council. Not only inhumanely treating Gazans, Israeli authorities have also ended the lives of a group of Nile crocodiles in a neglected West Bank farm. The reptiles, kept in poor conditions for decades, were euthanized after repeated escapes and concerns for local residents' safety. Originally broad as a tourist attraction, the farm deteriorated amid ongoing conflict and legal bans on crocodile farming. Yemen's Houthis have announced they fired a hypersonic ballistic missile dubbed Palestine 2 at Israel's Ben Gurion airport in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Israeli occupation military said the missile was intercepted by its air force overnight. This attack is the latest in a series of long-range missile launches by the Houthis since the Gaza conflict escalated. Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem has accused Israel of repeatedly violating the ceasefire agreement, breaking it thousands of times. He condemned the U.S. for attempting to weaken Lebanon and Hezbollah, revealing an American demand to disarm the group within 30 days. He warned that the U.S. underestimates Hezbollah's strength and stressed refusal to set a timeline for disarming amid ongoing Israeli aggression. He also declared that any broader Israeli attack on Lebanon would be met with missile retaliation. Israeli drones flew low over southern Lebanon, dropping stun grenades near a border village in a fresh violation of the ceasefire with Hezbollah. The drones were seen over Tyre and nearby areas. Despite ceasefire agreements requiring Israel's full withdrawal from southern Lebanon, Israeli occupation forces still occupy 5 border outposts. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has stated that Russia no longer feels constrained by any limitations and reserves the right to take necessary steps regarding its military posture. When asked about potential announcements on deploying intermediate-range weapons, Peskov said such matters are sensitive and unlikely to be publicly disclosed. Two people were killed and 10 injured after Russia launched a drone strike on Ukraine's Kharkiv region. The attack involved 34 strikes, drones, targeting the Lozova district, damaging railway infrastructure, including a station and depot, as well as nearby residential buildings. Regional Governor Ole Sinyahobov emphasized that no military targets were present at the strike sites, calling the attack an act of terror against civilians. Chinese officials have reaffirmed that the central government holds the exclusive authority to identify and approve the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. Garma Sedain, vice chairman of the Tibet Autonomous Region, emphasized that the Dalai Lama's successor must be found within China, follow traditional religious rituals, and receive Beijing's approval. This contrasts with the Dalai Lama's recent declaration that only his office can identify his reincarnation, which is expected to be born outside of China. Seven volcanoes in Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, including Eurasia's highest, Qnews, have erupted following a powerful 8.8 magnitude earthquake on July 30th. Scientists describe the simultaneous activity as a parade of volcanic eruptions, an event unseen in 300 years. Qnews emitted ash columns up to 9 kilometers high, while Krashenikov erupted for the first time in nearly 600 years. Rainstorms have caused floods in parts of Guangdong, a province in southern China that neighbors Hong Kong. Heavy rain from Monday morning until Tuesday caused water levels to rise in 16 rivers in the province. In the city of Huizhou, southeast of the province, torrential rain in the past 24 hours has flooded streets, residential compounds and villages. Businesses and schools have been closed and more than 1,000 people have been evacuated. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. Voting underway on the final day of Egypt's Senate elections. At least 22 die in 24 hours at Gaza's Nasser medical complex amid ongoing bombardment. And UN experts warn Gaza Humanitarian Foundation violates law by mixing aid with military aims. This concludes our news bulletin for today. But please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Q News EGY to stay informed. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.